I'm Nicole Lazzaro, and I'm president and founder of XEODesign. Well, I make games more fun. So I'm the leading expert on emotion and the fun of games. And I work with companies, everyone from EA to Sony to Ubisoft to PlayFirst, to make their games more engaging. For the past 20 years, I've studied how to make the screen, more engaging. Oh, there's been an enormous amount of changes, which has been really, really rewarding, because back in the year 2000, sort of at the turn of this century, I had this revelation on top of a temple in Egypt. I was standing on a temple in Dendara, looking out over the desert. It was a hot day, and I reached down for my canteen to get that last sip of water, when there at my feet, someone had carved a game board. And I thought, wow, two people had stood where I stood and thought to pass the time with a game. And I wondered, what were their feelings? What were their emotions? What engaged them in that activity, 2,000 years ago? And then what would they think of? How would they respond to the games we played today? Then putting on my future hat, thinking about, well, what kinds of engagement, what kinds of games would we play, say, in the year 2020? And it was then that I noticed that the kinds of game experiences that I wanted to have were going to have to, the industry was going to have to go through a significant number of changes to capture that same amount of play and engagement. In a sense, that set me on this train of research for the past 10 years to look at why people play games and what makes games fun. Because if you think about it, sort of like Newton watching the apple fall, emotions have this invisible pull on human action. And it's present if you see, in any kind of gameplay. But if you look at the games that I work on in the industry, they have thousands of rules and maybe a handful of emotions. But if you look at a group of kids playing, you see the whole pantheon, the entire pantheon of human emotions coming from a game with a single rule. Tag, you're it. So it's been really wonderful over the past 10 years to share with the game industry. Hundreds and thousands of people have downloaded our white papers and research to look at the whole spectrum of games evolving. So we saw the entrance of a lot of the mechanics of easy fun with the Wii, that exploration and role play. We've got new kinds of games that are both educational and good for you in a sense. So there's a lot of brain age and people playing Dance Dance Revolution to lose weight, people playing eco games now to make the world a better place. And then social gaming is huge, right? Is a huge trend, and we see that in something we call people fun, where people really experience more emotions the more that they connect through gameplay. And so that's a really interesting trend. So we've seen essentially the industry go from what was a very small percentage of the whole population, roughly about 15%, this hardcore market. We're now starting finally to see the games jump the chasm to more of a mass market product. So if you know Crossing the Chasm by Malcolm Gladwell, that you get these new kinds of players entering the market space. They want different products. They want different kinds of interaction. And so now that's what we're seeing with the games being produced by companies like Playfish and Zynga and Playdom. The Mafia Wars of the world, the Farmvilles of the world, all of those are really helping people engage in social interaction. And it's that social interaction that they actually enjoy more than the game itself. In fact, if you see people play in the same room, you'll see more emotions, a wider variety of emotions, more intense emotions than people playing the same game in different rooms. And so what we're helping our clients do is take those multiplayer interactions that might happen in the real world to put them into game mechanics that make online play all that much more engaging. What I was inspired to do was to really dig down into what makes things fun. Why do we play games? So what I did was I looked across games. So I studied everything from Halo to Tetris, people playing at home, school, and work, young and old, all the platforms, cross-gender. And I noticed that there were a lot of similarities between what the players' favorite moments in games were. And so what I did was I collected those moments on videotape, and then I used Paul Ekman's facial action coding, simplified it for games to measure their emotional responses. So there's 7 emotions you can measure in the face, others you can measure in the body. And what I did is I took those favorite moments in games and did a cluster analysis. It turns out that they group into 4 roughly categories of emotion. And then looking at those emotions, I looked at, well, what were the similarities of the types of decisions players were making? What kinds of play styles, what kind of play mechanics were involved? And that's how we came up with the 4 keys to fun. So that's our model with essentially, that's basically the research says that games create engagement in essentially 4 ways. There's the hard fun of challenge and mastery, the frustration that leads to what we call fiero, the yes, I won, where you get the boss monster. There's this wonderful feeling in the body that's on personal accomplishment. Usability, making things easy to use won't get you there at that emotion at all. In fact, you have to feel frustrated, and so frustrated, about ready to throw the controller through the window. If then, at that point, you win, that's when you get that feeling like, yes, we really did it. Very, very powerful emotion, and players will play hours of games. Both hardcore and casual gamers will play hours to get that kind of feeling. And then we noticed that, well, it wasn't just about the points and scoring. Like basketball, it's fun to shoot, it's fun to shoot hoops for score, but it's also just fun to just shoot hoops, right? It wouldn't be fun if the basketball hoop were like this big. It's nice that it's that small, right? And so it makes it more challenging. But players also like other things, like just dribbling the ball is fun, or playing without a score. And so there's this easy fun that goes along with the hard fun. So there's hard fun of challenge and mastery. The easy fun, which is more about exploration and role play, storytelling. We get mechanics involving ambiguity and detail. So in The Sims, you can put the Sims in your pool and then pull out the ladders to see what happens. You can drive a racetrack backwards. In Grand Theft Auto, you can go from point A to point B on a mission, the hard fun of the game, right? But at any point in time, you can actually also, they give you, like I'm improv theater, they give you a plate glass window, they give you a freeway exit ramp, parking meters, and it's up to you as the player to figure out how those interact. And so with that kind of mechanic, we really, they're very different types of interactions that we're going. And what we noticed is that with the 4 keys is that best-selling games tend to have 3 out of the 4. And if players wouldn't do just one, they tended to also, within a 20-minute session, have 3 out of the 4 that they played, and their favorites were roughly 3 out of the 4. So that's hard fun, frustration of fear. That's easy fun with curiosity, wonder, and surprise. Wonder is this great emotion that actually adults feel very rarely. So that's wonderful that games and movies, can give it to us, but games especially. Then the third one is what we call serious fun. So in easy fun, you get a lot of feedback for, car, plate glass window, see what happens. In serious fun, it's actually all about the reward. So how do you feel before, during, and after? So we find players play to blow off frustration at their boss or at their teacher. They also play, though, for getting the feeling of getting smarter, or of creating making a difference in the world. There is people playing, again, Brain Age to lose weight, Dance Dance Revolution to Brain Age to get smarter, and Dance Dance Revolution to lose weight. But we also see stuff that really represents who they are. So there's about to be a real surge in eco games, which we're actually making one. Which we can talk about in a bit, that our game Tilt, and that allows players to express their values in the world. So it's not just about playing games separate, but actually how it reflects on them and what they value, what their motives are, what they like about and want to see happen. So that's serious fun. That's excitement and relaxation. A lot of other emotions, repetition, rhythm, music get into that. We're using the fun of games to do real work often. Serious gaming, where you're doing a firefighting simulator or a nuclear power plant simulator to learn. That's all part of serious fun. And then the last form of engagement is people fun. And people fun is really, it's an amazing area. You've got emotion. The emotion that we can measure is amusement, so laughter. So you can laugh, and whenever you see laughter, then you know that you're getting people to engage with each other. And with people fun, we have a lot of mechanics that are social mechanics that create social bonding, that bring people together. Everyone's got a friend, for example, that can make you do the roll on the floor laughing thing, right? And when you can actually then get up and breathe again, you actually feel closer to that person. And so what's interesting about that is that there's not a disconnect between, it actually doesn't separate, the game doesn't separate, it actually pulls people together. And what we get there is we get the ability to actually create social bonds. I really hate the word social capital. A lot of folks in the social media space talk about, oh, well, we're building social capital, when in fact what you're really doing is you're weaving the social fabric between people. So some of the factors that go into it are creating social tokens, for example. So if you have mechanics in your game that could then be mutated or changed in a certain way and passed from player to player, that can actually increase the social bonding that goes on in the game. So if I give you a health pack, I feel generous, you feel gratitude, and then someone else might see that action and say, oh, elevation, wow, human kindness. And then later on in the game, that situation may be reversed. Or you might experience Schadenfreude, which is, the pleasure when when one of your rivals, experiences misfortune. Or Nachas, which is this pleasure and pride when someone you help succeeds. So when you mentor someone and they succeed, you feel this emotion around them. So if you can think about what we can do just by adding these different verbs, adding new verbs to the games, we can actually change what we call an emotion profile. So just like wine or chocolate has this flavor profile, you have a nose and a head and a nice long finish, games and other entertainment produce a series of sensations in the body that can be intentionally designed. They already create, and even media products, other media products create, social media, for example, have certain emotional signatures in the body, if you will. And you can actually intentionally design them to create different things that really go with the task at hand. So for example, the social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, all of them have a number of different verbs that really match this profile of friendship and getting closer. So for example, the best-selling games on Facebook, are the ones that are about, people, plants, and people, plants, and pets, okay? And all of those have wonderful social emotions. Mafias, you've got Farmville, gardening, and you've got, Pet Society, or, the Animal Crossing kind of clones. And all of those are really revolving around friendship. You also have verbs. So the verb in Facebook of poke, so that by adding that feature poke, that kind of is like, well, that's a poke in the ribs maybe. So that's friendly. So it creates a little bit what we call amici. It's Italian for this friendly, friendly kind of feeling. But what we can do is with that is you can then actually, by adding these verbs or taking them out, you can adjust this emotion profile. Same thing with Twitter. So Twitter actually has a big challenge for it right now, because it's got a follow you, follow me kind of game going on. So you have underneath your avatar photo, you've created a game because by putting that hard fun, that score, how many followers I have underneath my headshot, well, that kind of encourages certain behavior because people will behave to maximize that score because that's what a score does, right? So what you do then is friend as many people who then friend you back, and so then your score goes up. But then what happens to your feed of your following, if you're following, a million people, are you really following any of them? Can you really use it to, stay up or really touch base with them? Or is it just, a lot of people have, 0 tweets and, 1,000 followers. It's like, well, what's that all about? It's not, and so in a sense that by putting a score there, players actually broke the game. They broke the game a little bit. And so the addition of lists and obviously, some other mechanics like retweeting and DMing and stuff, direct messaging and stuff, that all helps bind the game that is Twitter, bind that social experience together. And so you can see how all these actions have a sense of cloud of emotion around them. And that's what makes the experience really fill out. Just like a film would with story and character, we're actually painting, in a sense, the UI. We're actually painting the experience with emotion and attention. And essentially, by intentional design, you can actually color it any emotion that you choose if you know what verb to use. Well, I think that the experiences that are being designed are definitely much more casual. In our research, what's interesting is that it's not so much the mechanic, the type of choice that you make in the game, or the type of challenge, but the theme tends to have more of a gender skew. And what's interesting with, I'm glad you brought up the gender issue, because there's some really interesting stuff. Not all guys want to have a Rambo fantasy. Some kind of get tired of it after a little while. A lot of guys like sports, but not everybody likes sports. And if you think about if you get two groups, and it could be divided by gender or age, average session time, amount of violence in the experience, you have to remember that average is an average of what? Well, it's an average of individuals. And those individuals actually aren't all on that same line. Even if there's a statistical difference between the two, you actually then have two normal distribution curves. And so there's a lot of guys in the girls' range, say, and a lot of girls in the guys' range. And what people tend to forget with 50 years of marketing experience behind us now, we tend to jump right into the gender as like, oh, this is the defining rule. This is how we make our games better because we're going to target this by gender. Turns out, though, if we put everything that people like about games, we just sort of dump it on the table, okay? And in one hand, we gather everything that guys like and only guys like in one hand. And if we gather in the other hand everything girls like and only women like in the other, well, then what do we do? Well, the game industry, it makes a game for guys and a game for girls, right? Well, what are we forgetting? Turns out what we're forgetting is everything that's still on the table, right? And it turns out in terms of our research, everything that's still on the table is what players like the most about games. And so when we think about how to use gender segmentation as a way to make games more fun, it's actually a pretty slippery slope, because if you're looking at a lot of games that have mass appeal, it's like 40-60, male and female, and games are almost all played in mixed gendered environments. So it's not surprising that the most popular games like World of Warcraft or The Sims or Myst, and we've worked on 3 of the Myst series, is that they actually draw from both pools. There's mechanics and situations and themes that appeal to that appeal to both. But in terms of casual games, what we find is that there's a lot of very interesting, obviously, theme stuff. So the restaurant simulations, Diner Dash. We've worked with PlayFirst on everything since Diner Dash 2 pretty much on as come through our lab. And what we've noticed is that there are a number of mechanics, and it's not that women absolutely like hard fun. You might think that, oh, it's the guys that want the real sweaty kind of like intense experience, and the girls want this either very social or very easy time. Not true at all. I mean, women love, as well as men, they really love to work hard for their game. The harder they work, the more rewarding it feels. And so it's not surprising that people will, you play Tetris on time mode, and you do work up a sweat. But what we don't see is a lot of complexity in the controls. So, women do tend to invest less time in learning in a thing. They also are newer entrants into the market. So what correlates a lot more with casual and core kind of games is like, how long you've been playing games and how often you play. Because games for the hardcore market have really scaled up in terms of adding additional features over time. And the hardcore market really has perfected, these sort of 5 core games. There's 5 core games that they perfected, whereas the casual space is much more open. Tilt is a game basically it's Tilt Flips Adventure in 1.5 dimensions, and it's an experience on the iPhone. What we've done is the story starts with Flip, who crawls out of this polluted ooze that was once Shady Glen, and decides to take on this toxic green blight cloud by eating carbon out of the air and gathering water and seeds to replant the forest. And Flip is just a tiny little lizardy, kind of froggy chameleon kind of character, and can really only move in 4 directions. So it can only have 4 positions. And what we did was we created this. So all you do there are no buttons in the game. All you do is tilt the game. You just tilt the iPhone to control it. And Flip gathers, water and seeds and eats pollution. And what we found is that we wanted to really capitalize on, or give people the opportunity to express themselves, kind of like the Powers of 10 video. If you've seen that Eames animation where you go from really small to being like way out towards Saturn and then go back down again. We wanted to give the players the experience of the power of tiny actions. So if I just, to make a simple choice between, say, paper and plastic, today, or I turn off my light switch, then you actually, you want to see how those decisions add up to a global experience of play. And so we've got a single player layer for the game where you go through 12 scenes. There's 60 levels to the game. And then all of your tilt points are geocoded to where you earn them. So we can actually have, on a global scale, we can have different continents and different regions, competing and cooperating against each other. So we have, North America going against China. And then in the real world, we take it one step further where you can actually do an action in the real world, like you change your light bulbs and you might use reduce your carbon footprint or, start a recycling program or an educational program. And if you were to share that on social media with your friends with a tag for the game will actually scrape that and you earn credit for it in the game. So you can basically do stuff in the real world, and through the miracle of social media, you actually do better in the game. So we take it all the way up to that to a real world experience to make the world a better place, and it's all through gameplay. The iPhone is taking gaming to a whole nother level of play because it's always with you. It's always with you, and there are a lot of new sensors, so you have accelerometer and geocoding, that sort of thing. And more importantly, I think, is it's also social. And so that social interaction that through gameplay, because it has your contact list on it, for example, being able to bridge out to your friends and play together in these micro payments of time, if you will, it's going to be a huge thing for the iPhone. I say this even though I invented the very first game to use the accelerometer. The very first version of Tilt I designed with Joe Hewitt at iPhone Dev Camp about a week after the iPhone came out. And it was really fun because we just had 2 web pages, 1 YouTube video, and yet we got 250,000 visits. because we mapped the mechanics of the game into the new control set of the iPhone, and then also it created that sense of wonder, that curiosity, wonder, and surprise. And when people who had an iPhone, they didn't have an app store, no API or anything like that, so they could play, they could play with the things that came on the device. But if they hopped over to our webpage, they could have a whole new experience to show to their friends. So there was a lot of over-the-shoulder play as well. And so, just sort of wrapping back in, what we've got is this whole new set of games, and it's not just the controls, not just the micro format that fits in your hand, but it's that connectedness and the fact that I can asynchronously play with my friends, again, to sort of weave more social fabric with them. That's what's going to be the real killer app, if you will, for the iPhone. And in fact, with the newly announced iPad, I predict that e-reading isn't going to be the dominant, reading your newspaper is not going to be the dominant use case at all. The dominant thing is actually going to be gaming, and two-player gaming, though. I don't think many people will, hold that device that's that large, in front of them, for that long to, let's say, drive a car. What will happen, though, is I could put it down, in between us, and then we have a game board between us, and then kind of like that Star Wars chess scene, in Episode 3 or whatever. You can actually make moves, and we can share that environment, or we have it in our lap, and we have this battleship kind of experience where I can see some of your screen, but not. That's going to be, for the first time, we're going to have real face-to-face electronic gaming. I can't wait. We're going to be obviously taking Tilt to the iPad, and I can't wait to see what developers come up with. Well, I think what our mission right now is, with launching Tilt and the consulting that we do with our client companies, is really unlocking, human potential and improving quality of life through play. And it's not, there isn't a game in the world that doesn't teach. And there's no play style even that doesn't teach. So there is this very human, not a human need, but it's just a human facility. This play experience is part of what we do. So we're actually going to see work and play get a lot closer together. So we're going to be playing more at work. We're actually going to be, we're actually going to have work that feels more like play. So I predict that not only do we have, we're going to have more robust, simulations, training simulation games. So if I hand you a nuclear reactor, you can play with it. You can train, you can do management training that way. You can do all kinds of social. In fact, World of Warcraft, if you're a guild leader, you're learning a lot about management, managing other people. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff happening in games coming through, and I think I'm really hopeful for, and this is why I'm sharing a lot of my research, is that what we're really hopeful for is to see huge changes in the American workplace and actually all around the world. Because when I go in and I'm trained to read emotion on people's faces, what I see, and I see that, and I see their work styles and their what tasks they can actually do. And I'm in awe and in horror of what I see when I go into the average office space, because the work there is so, it's so ill-suited to the task at hand. If this were a zoo or a kindergarten, Child Protective Services or, the Humane Society would be down there, to close it down in about an hour, because the work environment, the physical space, the types of tasks, the emotions around those tasks are totally ill-suited to accomplishing the task at hand. And so by really understanding play and what motivates people, and games are self-motivating systems, so self-motivating systems, we're going to see that self-motivation permeate throughout everything from word processing to the way that your copier operates. We're going to see not only that, we're going to see these game mechanics embedded in the software that we use, in the physical devices that we touch, like a copy machine. But we'll also see it in the business structures as well. So we're going to see the way that we give feedback, the way that we give out tasks, the way that we manage folks is actually going to be a lot more responsive to game style kind of thinking. Because in a game, what do you have to have? Well, Sid Meier's says it's got to be interesting choices, right? So you got to have that. But then you also, I think that what we do in games is we simplify the world. We suspend some consequences. That gives us a little free action. And then we then enhance the feedback. And enhancing the feedback and enhancing the reward, that easy fun and that serious fun, really can then motivate people to explore and extend themselves. And when they accomplish something hard that they couldn't do before, then that hard fun comes in. And you feel much more well-rounded as a person, and much more, you feel much more that sense of accomplishment and, really usefulness, in society as large. And actually, just riffing off of that a bit, I think that also the other way that games are changing the way we are as a society is that games have multivariant inputs, so especially simulation games. So you've got multiple things coming in, and you have the ability to make a lot of changes. So in a sense, simulation games really have the opportunity to change the world, to really educate us as global citizens. Because what our simulation games are, they have multivariate inputs and multivariant outputs. So when I play SimCity, I play a city manager and I make decisions, and I can make decisions related to Godzilla, or I can make decisions to earthquake or fire, or I can build it up. But when you're done with SimCity, you actually know a little bit more about that. You know a bit more of that world. And what we really need right now are people who can understand multivariant systems to fight things like global warming, AIDS, all of these problems. We've pretty much dealt with a lot of the low-hanging fruit here. And so, I think that games play a really serious role, a really important role in elevating up our thinking to that next level of play. And I think if we can do that, the world will definitely be a better place. Growing up as a kid, one of my favorite, as a kid, the thing that had me drop the most quarters was Star Wars, the Star Wars flight sim. I loved the feeling of flying. I loved that whole experience. I felt like I was this fighter pilot, and I was racing, and I never got past level 7, but I loved the way the audio came in. I was in that universe, even though it was only wireframe at the time. It was a wireframe kind of flight sim. And that experience allowed me to extend my love of the whole Star Wars universe, which again was this this aspirational fantasy. So it really connected it, for me. And I think that would definitely be my favorite game.